To the bill.
Colleagues, I admit, when I first heard about this bill, I was skeptical. As a former deputy district attorney, I've encountered youth offenders who I believe had no hope for rehabilitation. These were individuals who had committed terrible, violent acts against other people. Some of them were the worst of the worst. However, I also encountered so many young people who committed crimes out of desperation, who committed crimes because they had no structure or guidance in their lives, who committed crimes because they were surrounded by crime. Years ago, I was a juvenile prosecutor in Texas where my wife was on active duty with the Air Force. One day, I went in and I got the case of a 15-year-old boy who had stabbed his brother 33 times over losing a video game. It was a terrible and violent crime. In Oregon, that kid would have been waived automatically into adult court and likely would have gone away to adult prison for 90 months to essentially a life sentence on Measure 11 Assault 1 charges. Thankfully for that kid, we were not in Oregon. And as I dug deeper into that kid's background, I found that there was more than met the eye when I read that police report. This kid's brother, the younger brother, the victim, was 10 months younger, and he was the golden child of the family. The younger brother was bigger, smarter, more loved, and won almost everything when the brothers competed, except that video game, till that very day. That was the one thing that his older brother was better at. The older brother's biological father wasn't in the picture, and after his mother remarried and his half-brother was born, he became an afterthought in his own family. He was emotionally neglected and stunted, but he loved his younger brother. And in an adolescent moment of anger, he committed a terrible crime against him. He was devastated by what he'd done. The question we had to ask in that case was, what did that kid need? Did he need to be locked up forever? Or did he need the possibility of a second chance? The victim recovered and didn't want his brother sent to prison. The older brother was sent off instead to a 9-month residential program. And when he got out, he went to live with an aunt who gave him the love, the structure, and the discipline that he so desperately needed and had never gotten. He also got 8 years of probation and had 8 years of prison time hanging over his head if he violated that probation. He thought as a child, he acted as a child, and we treated him like a child. We gave him a chance to grow up, with the possibility that he would face adult punishment if he did not succeed. And he did just fine, because the system afforded him an opportunity to finally get the love and support he needed. There have been many fears raised about Senate Bill 10,008. People suggested that it will put unreformed violent criminals back on the streets. However, that's far from the truth. I understand the fear about violent criminals being released because of my own experience with one. In my first year as an officer in the military, I lost one of my soldiers, not to violence in another country, but to an experience we have all become too familiar with, a school shooting. He was one of Kip Kinkle's victims. That sense of loss and injustice followed me and motivated me throughout my career. But I want to be clear, this legislation is not about Kip Kinkle. Had this legislation been in place when he committed his terrible crime, the outcome likely would have been the same. And when this legislation is passed, it will not let him out of prison. For the others in our system who can be redeemed, we should be focusing on the hope of the future, not the mistakes of the past. There is no justice in treating children as small adults and locking them away without a chance to rehabilitate. Senate Bill 1008 is a common-sense approach that offers balance. It will give the judges the kind of discretion they should already have, the discretion to give a kid a second chance. I hope you will join me in supporting Senate Bill 1008. Thank you.
Further